Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
He was one of the most brilliant people that have ever served as governor of Louisiana.
The state's only four-term governor remembered.
I believe we're in the beginning of a wave.
The number of Delta cases dramatically increasing in Louisiana.
I think we have to look at this from a broader perspective and recognize that the governor is correct.
For the first time in history, lawmakers will hold an override veto session.
I wanted to be a country and western singer, but I didn't have any talent.
A never-before-seen interview with a governor who was larger than life.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kara St. Cyr.
And I'm Andre Morrow. Right now, COVID-19 is on the rise again in Louisiana, with state officials urging people to get vaccinated to stave off the rapidly spreading Delta variant. Governor John Bel Edwards today saying that we've lost more than 4 months of progress.
Younger people seem to be the group that's affected more often by this new strain. People ages 5 to 39 are being admitted to hospitals at higher rates. In a press conference this morning, Dr. Catherine O'Neill with Our Lady of the Lake Hospital said that people who've already caught the virus are also at risk for the new variant and could end up in hospitals as well.
The Delta virus, the Delta variant, is not last year's virus, and it's become incredibly apparent to healthcare workers that we are dealing with a different beast. Last year, if you were infected with the virus, you had protection that lasted quite some time. That is no longer the case, and if you've been previously infected, you are not protected against Delta variant. Last year, kids didn't seem to spread this virus very much, and they didn't seem to get that sick from it. We didn't see this increase in our pediatric admissions, not that much. We saw some unfortunate cases, but overall we felt good about our kids. Delta variant is coming for our children. We are seeing increased admissions, we are seeing increased office visits, we are seeing sick kids and intubated kids today in our hospital. Last year, our pregnant mothers felt pretty good about Delta virus, about coronavirus. They didn't have vaccine, but they knew how to protect themselves, and our pregnancies looked okay. And this spring, our pregnant mothers are at risk. We're seeing them admitted, we're seeing them ventilated, and we're seeing the loss of their children.
And no new mandates are in place yet, but guidelines for the virus have been updated. Even if you're fully vaccinated, health officials say, but have health complications or know someone around you that does, you should start wearing a mask again. If you're not fully vaccinated and you can be vaccinated, health officials say do it, but be prepared to wear a mask when needed and distance socially.
If it sounds like Dr. O'Neill and Dr. Canner and I are a little bit frustrated, it is because we are. We're frustrated because we've lost 4 months of progress in reducing COVID hospitalizations. Frustrated because for so long all we had were mitigation measures to slow the spread. And now we actually have medical measures that actually protect people and slow transmission. But people are still getting sick. People are still being hospitalized. People are still dying. And it is more than 90% preventable.
The governor says misinformation is the #1 reason why people won't get the vaccine in this state.
There's also big news coming out of today's governor's news briefing. The legislature is not wrapped for the summer. Lawmakers voted in favor of an override veto session. It is the first time since the adoption of our modern Constitution that this has happened.
The vetoes that I issued, I fully stand behind. I will direct you to the veto message that I issued, and they fully explained the rationale for all of those. All of those vetoes were in the state's interest.
Tonight, the rotunda of the state capitol will be readied for tomorrow's 8-hour public viewing for former Governor Edwin Edwards. His body will lie in state beginning at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Edwards died peacefully Monday morning at his home in Gonzales, surrounded by family and friends. Private services will take place Sunday at the old state capitol.
New Orleans political columnist Stephanie Grace this week said of Edwards, he was a bad boy and people loved him for it. Just the ultimate rogue of a politician. And now a check on other news making headlines around the state. Home evictions could soon spike in our state as a federal freeze expires July 31st. Landlords challenged the order in court and won, saying they also have bills to pay. They also pointed to the $45 billion in federal money set aside to help pay rents and other expenses. Home evictions were delayed as the coronavirus cost people their jobs and put them months behind on their rent. Even with a sharp rise of COVID cases throughout the state, education leaders are leaving decisions on mask mandates, physical distancing, and other measures to try and lessen the coronavirus spread to local public school districts for the upcoming year. The Department of Education sent updated guidance to K-12 school systems with recommendations, not mandates. The health director of New Orleans says efforts to mitigate COVID-19 at large, big, easy gatherings will include mask mandates or requirements that attendees be vaccinated or have a negative test, and that will likely continue into the fall because of the low vaccination rate and the spread of the dangerous variants. COVID rates are surging largely among non-vaccinated people as the more easily transmissible Delta variants spread across the state. State police released a report this week saying Lafayette police officers were justified in last year's deadly shooting of Trayford Pellerin. The ruling has prompted a federal lawsuit. The 152-page report was written in December but released Wednesday, 2 months after a grand jury declined to indict any of the officers. The body of a Kenner native, Cassandra Bilodeau Stratton, was one of 9 people identified early this week as a victim of the condo collapse in Surfside, Florida. The Miami-Dade police tweeted her name along with 8 others whose bodies had been recovered and identified. Her body was recovered Saturday. So far, 97 people have been confirmed dead in the June 24th collapse, and the search in the rubble continues for about 50 more people. This headline also, Thursday, state gambling regulators backed the state's first license for fantasy betting that paves the way for DraftKings to launch its operations in the 47 parishes where voters said yes to gaming nearly 3 years ago. DraftKings says fantasy sports bets will soon be live in those parishes. As governor, it was Edwin Edwards overseeing the legalization of gambling in the state back in the 1990s. Some called him the last great American populist, some others the Cajun King. Edwards came to dominate state politics for 3 decades, and his first 2 terms couldn't have gone any better. He pushed for and got a new state constitution, and oil revenue changes also happening. He was riding high. Whispers of scandal, though, always dogged him, and it wasn't until he left office that he was actually convicted of wrongdoing.
You know, for all these years, people who've never met me analyze my character and my life's work, sometimes about issues on which I've never given an opportunity to tell my story.
In 1995, at the end of Edwin Edwards' 4th term as governor, he addressed the legislature, looking back on his accomplishments.
It made me realize how many people don't have the advantages that we have. And I always had a sympathy for people who were poor, without education, big families, and having to struggle to get on in life.
Governor Edwards did an awful lot for this state. He was one of the most brilliant people that have ever served as governor of Louisiana.
He was handsome, he was very articulate and witty, and he sort of had a roguishness about him that appealed to Louisiana voters.
There was always that attitude there. And talk about power. He had it, he wanted it, and he grabbed it.
He had a big personality that filled the stage in a different kind of way. So people saw in him a dynamic guy who could get things done.
Moi, Edwin Edwards. Moi, Edwin Edwards. Je fais ça de moi. Je fais ça de moi.
The first thing he changed, he revamped the state's constitution.
Before that, there were 200 agencies, departments, and the Constitution made it possible for us to reorganize government to 20 departments, which made it much more responsive to the needs and also very more economical.
I say the biggest accomplishment was that when he changed the taxation of oil and gas from a straight per barrel or per cubic foot to a percentage of value.
And by changing it to a percent of value, then we were able to enjoy the great boon when oil prices went way up.
All 11 of the hospitals were either completely rebuilt by me or modernized and renovated.
Who built the Cajun Dome? Who paved the parking lot at the football stadium? Who's 4-lane in the highway to Abbeville?
He was constitutionally barred from seeking a third term at that time. But a new element of the Constitution called the jungle primary paved a way for a Republican to take his seat.
Edwards is, by default, the father of the Republican Party.
I spent a lot of money and a lot of time, a lot of effort on the long primary until I finally got the Democratic nomination, and then I had to face Dave Treen in a general election, and I thought that was unfair.
The open primary opened everything up, let anybody vote for anybody regardless of party registration.
Edwards beat incumbent Dave Treen to win a third term, but allegations of corruption and the state's mounting money problems due to the oil downturn caught up with him.
There was a lot of corruption or hints of corruption, certainly there was a number of investigations. And funny, it started with the suspicion that he was that corruption was funding his gambling habit.
Well, I couldn't do anything about it. I mean, I was a public figure, and members of the press had a right and obligation to investigate, and law enforcement people had the same privilege, and I accepted that.
This indictment results either from mistakes which the Republican U.S. Attorney has made or from mistakes which I have made. We will not know which of us is to blame until the trial has been concluded.
He went to trial and avoided conviction in '86, but in '87, the voters of Louisiana issued their own verdict, electing Governor Buddy Roemer. We know what happened from there. Roemer lost popularity after expanding gaming, and in '91, he failed to make the runoff. Edwards defeated a white supremacist to win a final term, and federal investigators finally won a conviction against Edwards for racketeering and money laundering regarding the gaming expansion.
I think he was simply a throwback to the old way of thinking in our state that the law does not apply to everyone.
History is going to be very cruel to Edwin Edwards. They know Edwards for corruption, they know Edwards for court cases, they know Edwards for glib quotes, they know Edwards for sexual shenanigans, but they don't know him for anything they did to make the state a better place.
Louisiana is among the 5 least vaccinated states, which is driving the surge in COVID rates. Medical experts are saying that the Delta variant is infecting those who have yet to get their shots, and even a couple people who have gotten them. Catherine O'Neill with Our Lady of the Lake Hospital tells us why she thinks Louisiana is on the verge of another wave.
It seems Louisiana is back where we started, or at least close to it. COVID cases are climbing back up to levels we saw in summer of 2020. This time, though, Catherine O'Neill with Our Lady of the Lake Hospital says it's the Delta variant wreaking havoc.
In the South, especially Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, when you look at hotspots, so straight north of us, we are seeing just a dramatic rise in cases. Speaking to the docs in Columbia, Missouri, just a couple of weeks ago, their ICUs were filling up. They ran out of ventilators. And so we were sort of prepared to see that same thing, knowing what Delta brings to communities.
The Delta variant is more deadly than the last strains we saw. It spreads quicker, too, especially in unvaccinated populations, like here in Louisiana.
We have gone from, having a not so full ICU to a full ICU and opening another unit to take patients. We were holding COVID patients last night in the ER, waiting to open beds, which we have not done in a long time. So the increase has stressed our bed capacity, has stressed where we'll put patients to take care of them. And as with any surge we've talked about before, when you stress the medical community, everybody hurts because now everybody is looking for their nurse, calling down the hall. And when you have a lot of patients in the hospital, it's hard to get to every patient the way you want to. So we're starting to see those numbers reach that kind of fevered pitch again.
Our vaccination numbers lag significantly behind the national average, which makes this place a breeding ground for COVID cases. Our numbers are rising quickly, mimicking the second and third waves we saw last year.
I believe we're in the beginning of a wave. This is what cases usually do, is start to escalate fairly quickly. Now, how high that surge will reach and how many people will become infected depends on mitigation measures and vaccination. And so this is the first surge where we've been heavily vaccinated. Or I say heavily vaccinated because as a healthcare community, we are. Our community itself is poorly vaccinated, but it's the first surge in which vaccination rates will affect our numbers. And that remains to be seen how well our current vaccination rate does for us.
But officials aren't waiting to find out. During a press conference, Dr. Jennifer Avegno, the New Orleans Health Department director, said that people should continue to wear masks indoors to reduce the number of breakthrough cases.
I urge you to really think about continuing to mask indoors, whether you're vaccinated or not, in places that are public and you don't know the vaccination status of everybody who's there. As long as Delta is causing outbreaks all around us, we've got to protect our most vulnerable, as we have for the last 16 plus months. So this is why you're going to see me continuing to wear a mask in public. Everybody knows I've been vaccinated. I did it on TV. But it's for my mom, who is fully vaccinated but older and has health challenges. For me, it's a small price to pay wearing my mask when I go to the grocery store or church or wherever it is that I am, knowing that I'm cutting down on a small risk of being that breakthrough case that could land her in the hospital or worse.
If vaccination numbers don't catch up, medical experts say that this variant could mutate again and create another strain even more dangerous than this one.
Delta is here, Delta is dangerous, and Delta is killing people. This should scare the hell out of you.
But now there's the added fear of a mutation that could possibly be resistant to the vaccine. Younger people who aren't vaccinated, mostly those 18 to 39, are the group that's catching the virus the most. The older population is for the most part safe, but these people, along with others who have underlying health conditions, are more likely to see breakthrough cases. They'd also be more susceptible to hospitalizations and severe side effects if the variant became immune. Dr. O'Neill says that reality is very possible if things don't change.
Unvaccinated people spur variant production, and we are overall an unvaccinated population. So yes, the next variant is out there, and it's going to be produced by an unvaccinated population like ours.
O'Neill says masking up indoors and social distancing can help keep Delta from mutating, but ultimately it's the vaccine that'll save everyone.
The concealed carry proposal is one of the bills the governor vetoed and will be on the agenda for discussion at the override veto session starting next week. I spoke with law enforcement and outside organizations who say they're afraid of what could happen if the legislature overrides this bill.
I certainly applaud the men and women who are here standing in unison in support of the governor's veto of Senate Bill 118.
The concealed carry bill still causing a rift between lawmakers and now outside forces. About 6 different law enforcement agencies asked legislators not to override the governor's veto.
I think we have to look at this from a broader perspective and recognize that the governor is correct.
Lafourche Sheriff Craig Webre says this bill is a solution in search of a problem. In his eyes, if a person gets access to a gun without the proper restrictions in place, anyone can take justice into their own hands, which could put not only that person in danger, but everyone around them, including sheriff's deputies.
If a police officer stops a car and there are 4 occupants in that car and all 4 occupants have a concealed weapon, I mean, that one officer versus 4 people gives them a distinct advantage and him a distinct disadvantage.
Webre says the best way to keep these types of incidents from happening is to continue using the permit process. It vets gun applicants by first requiring them to go through training and educational courses. The background check makes sure the person isn't barred from carrying in the first place. And lastly, you have to pay a fee. Without all these components, Webre thinks arrests will increase because people will be negligent.
There are a lot of restrictions about where you can carry and when you can carry, as well as I mentioned earlier, liability laws concerned with what happens if you use a firearm negligently. And I say use it negligently. It might be that it's something as simple as dropping it on the floor and it fires and someone gets harmed or killed.
Webre isn't the only one worried about a possible veto session. Angel Bradford with Moms Demand Action says the crime specifically is a cause for concern. She says that taking away restrictions is just going to give criminals easier access to a dangerous weapon.
We know that no law can stop all dangerous actions, but we do know that dangerous folks are emboldened in places where they know that they can conceal carry without a background check, without a permit, and without training.
According to a study done by Stanford University, permitless carry states see a 13 to 15% increase in gun violence. Bradford says we could see that here in Louisiana if we aren't careful.
It would be very unfortunate for us to have to experience more violent crime to realize that we actually need a stronger permitting system or training system, not a weaker one.
Proponents of the bill, like Senator Jay Morris, the bill's author, say that permitless carry won't increase crime. We reached out to Morris. He wasn't available for comment, but according to the Associated Press, he said that this proposal is for law-abiding citizens and that he wouldn't have drafted this bill if he thought it were dangerous. Other supporters say that the bill would eliminate a tedious and expensive process. It costs about $125 for a 5-year permit and $500 for a lifetime one. But Webre and Bradford say the cost is too great to get rid of the entire process for convenience.
The session will begin on July 20th. Lawmakers have a week to get the votes for an official override.
And now to more of our coverage of the life of former Governor Edwin Edwards, from his political heights to his federal prison lows. I sat down with Edwards in his home in Gonzales shortly before COVID changed our world, and tonight you'll hear a portion of that interview. As we began it, he asked me the reason for being there, and I said, you know, we figured you wouldn't always be here, and we wanted to hear from you before that was too late. So in one of the last, if not the last, sit-down interviews with Edwin Edwards, as candid as ever, and it's never been seen before.
I grew up on a farm with my father, who had a 3rd grade education and was a sharecropper. My mother was a lady who had a 7th grade education, and she was a self-taught midwife who delivered over 1,800 children in her life. I'm very proud of that. And of course, the fact that I'm the only 4-term governor is something that I appreciate very much.
Were you close to your parents?
Oh, very close. I had a very close relationship.
You're described as colorful, powerful, legendary. Is that accurate?
Well, I certainly wouldn't argue with that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. As governor, the most important thing that you did, what would you say?
Probably writing the new Constitution in the 1970s. That was very important and still serving us well today after all these years.
Early in your career, you thought you might be a preacher?
Well, I wanted to be a country and western singer, but I didn't have any talent.
No? Oh, really?
Only my mother thought I could sing. Okay. And then for a little while, when I was a teenager, I was a member of the Nazarene Church, and I was a youth minister. But I gave that up and decided to try something else.
Preacher versus politician. What is it about politics that was really your thing?
In my opinion, the ability to serve people and to make things happen, which is what I liked.
And you did?
Yeah.
What would you do if you were governor now? As you
look
around the state?
I'd cry a lot.
You would cry a lot?
Yeah.
If you were governor now, you'd cry a lot.
It's hard to deal with the legislature now.
Yeah.
There's a great deal of, I don't like what's happening in Washington or here because there's too much acrimony between parties.
Mm-hmm. Was governor your favorite political role?
Yes, because it gave me an opportunity to do things, and I like that.
Right.
I was in Congress and in the state legislature, but things moved too slow.
How do you rate some of the governors of the past? Which ones do you remember as the ones who did good for the people versus maybe were not effective?
Every one of them had challenges to meet. The two that I think did the worst were Jindal and Roma. But they did what they could at the time, but I'm not going to criticize them because I was in prison most of the time when they were governor, so I don't know what the problems were, but Jindal, I think, just was a horrible governor. He spent all of his time running for president.
You mentioned prison. What else did you do?
Well, I did. I had a lot of correspondence. People wrote me, and I had to write them back. And I I also did a lot of exercising, trying to keep healthy. But I spent a lot of time, I was the chief librarian, and I spent a lot of time helping some other inmates who didn't have any education get a GED.
How do you look back at those days?
In my long life, it's the only really unfair thing that ever happened to me. The whole thing was a disaster, ill-conceived, an effort by the part of overzealous prosecutors and a biased judge. You know, they tried me 4 times, and when I had a fair judge, they couldn't get any votes. But this judge was so bent on getting me convicted that when he found out people on the jury were trying to acquit me, he identified one of them and kicked him off the jury. And he allowed 11 people out of the jury pool to convict me. The only time in American history, in the national, in the federal system, that a person was convicted of a major crime with less than a 12-person vote. But it was done, and I had to live with it, and I did. I survived.
You survived.
You know, everything has a good thing. If it were not for the fact that they sent me to prison, I would never have met Trina, and I wouldn't have a baby named Eli, who's my pride and joy.
How do you want people to remember you?
As someone who cared, just like that.
You can watch my full interview in an hour-long special, Remembering Edwin Edwards. That airs Monday night at 7 here on LPB. It's also online in our digital media archives at ldma.org. That's along with a video history of Edwards' rise and fall and his final words. LDMA is a treasure of all Louisiana history. And everyone, that is our show for this week. Remember, you can watch anything LPB anytime with our LPB app.
The download is free from your app store. You can catch LPB news and public affairs shows, as well as other Louisiana programs you've come to enjoy over the years. And please, like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
For everyone here at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Andre Morrow.
And I'm Kara St. Cyr.
Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.